citizens of the Nigelverse. It is Nigel here once again, and welcome back to the Labyrinth. So, I got some poems for you guys, and I think you guys really enjoy these ones. So without further ado, let's get right into it. So, this first poem, and for those of you who are new here to Nigel Dixie Tales from Labyrinth, first of all, welcome. Also, I'm going to be reading 3 poems written by myself, but then 2 poems written by other prolific poets. Poems that I think are very interesting, with an interesting message that I want to talk about. So let's go over these first 3 poems by myself. This first one is called Spring. We welcome the new season as we go into spring. As the snow slowly melts and the winter fades away, the flowers blooming greet us as springtime is finally here. Now, this almost doesn't apply to where I live at, which is good old cold Buffalo. Sadly, we're not quite out of the winter woods yet, but just kind of a poem to welcome the spring and everything. Spring right around the corner. Hopefully, this winter has definitely been a rough one. I think this might be like the worst winter we've had in ages here in Buffalo, and that's saying something. But this next one is called Change. Why do we fear change? Because it's something new? Because we aren't sure where it will lead? Because we don't know if it will be worth it? Because we don't want to let go of the unfamiliar? Or it should be let go of the familiar. Because we fear what we don't know and what we don't understand. Because we venture into the unfamiliar. Because our life can change forever. So pretty much a series of questions. Why do we fear change? Why is change something that seems to scare us? I know there's quite a few people out there who are scared of change sometimes, and honestly, myself included. Sometimes change can be scary, mostly not because of what we know, but because of what we don't know. We don't know. Okay, if we change this, will it lead to what we want it to lead to? The reason we often make changes in life is because we want to see something different. But will it lead to something different? Will it lead to something better? Will it lead to something worse? We don't quite know, and so oftentimes we fear that because of that. And that's kind of just the message that this poem is conveying. This next one is called A Quiet Night. Curled up in bed, covers over my body. Not a worry in the world, just peace and quiet. To relax or to think. Either option is fine for me. The quiet of the night brings its peace and comfort. Shout out to all my insomniacs out there, such as myself, who's recording this at 12:30 in the morning. But just being able to curl up in bed, just relax especially after a long day, after a really long, tough day, whether at school or at work, such an underrated thing, and just having that peace and that quiet and that time to yourself is one of the best things and one of the best feelings. And admittedly, it's something you probably don't appreciate as much until you get older. Like when you're younger, you might come home, you gotta do homework and stuff, but then you also want to watch TV or play video games. Just sitting still and just relaxing isn't something that sounds the most appealing, but as you get older, you learn to appreciate that time, especially because it feels like with work and sometimes school, like college, and then sometimes some of us have families. We don't often get that time, so when we get that time, we want to cherish it as much as possible. Not a knock against work or school or even children, and but just saying, sometimes that peace and quiet. Sometimes we crave that, and when we don't get it, it does kind of suck a little bit. But this next one is Nothing Gold Can Stay, and this is by Robert Frost. Nature's first green is gold, her hardest hue to hold. Her early leaves a flower, but only so an hour. Then leaf subsides to leaf, so Eden sank to grief. So dawn goes down today, nothing gold can stay. Very interesting one. I feel like I've read quite a few Robert Frost poems as of late. Hey, all two of them that I've read as of late. But this one's interesting and talking about nature and everything, and saying that nature's green is gold. So like the grass and the plants and everything. But with nothing gold staying, that likely means it's not going to be around forever. That eventually it's got to transition, whether it's a change in season, going from like spring to summer, summer to fall, fall to winter, winter to spring, and stuff like that. That change in that transition, I think, is kind of being uh, being shown here, and the process of that change. That's kind of how I interpreted it. Let me know if you interpreted something different, and if you do, that's totally fine. And that's one of the things I love about poetry, and honestly, just perspective in general, is that you may not see something the exact same way someone else sees something. But that's kind of what I got out of this one. And this last one is called "We Play Charades," and this is by Menon. Apologies if I mispronounced that at all, that name at all. But my first instinct is to translate the word, make it easier to understand without saying the word itself. I feel guilt for this mistake, for changing languages instead of describing. Isn't this an easy way out? My mother and I are playing charades alone. We make this mistake over and over, our tongues too quick to learn. After all, isn't this what we are used to? When one language fails, we try the next and the next, until someone understands. A syllable escapes like a captured cricket, singing for its love of freedom. It is too late to go back now, to jar the language we first learned. We do not want to either. So in this game, we swallow first. Card, swallow, describe, flip. Card, swallow, describe, flip. So, a couple themes here. I feel like the first one, the two themes that I kind of picked up on potentially. One could be more explicit and one could be more implicit. Explicit, of course, outright stated, more obvious, versus implicit, which is more of an implied. So getting the explicit one out in the open first is talking about switching languages and going from one language to another, and doing that not just in different way of speaking, but through charades and everything. And, as someone who's tried to learn languages before, I studied Spanish from fourth grade to eighth grade. Then I studied Italian throughout high school, and then I studied Japanese in not Japanese, Chinese. My apologies. I studied Chinese in a senior year of college, and now I'm currently learning Italian on Duolingo and everything, and more so just to brush up on it. But going from one language to another, trying to learn another language, is not easy. It's kind of difficult, usually because oftentimes a different language might have different rules for their words as opposed to yours. So having to make that transition, having to learn all these new words and what these words mean and the context of these words, but then these words don't always have this context. Sometimes in this context you gotta use these words. It can be pretty confusing, and it can be kind of tough. But charades, like acting out movements and everything, and that, I feel like that's more of a universal language. Oftentimes, when you act out things, that's something that a lot of people have seen before. Or like, if I say the word eating, if English isn't your first language, then you might not necessarily understand what I'm saying. But if I do like eating, like this, it's like a symbol for eating, something like that. And then you might say, oh yeah. So, having those charades, aids in tying that into language, is a theme I've picked up on pun, but almost a sense of like displacement, having to switch languages. But now for the implicit, and this is just what I think I might have picked up on, and I could be completely wrong about this, but more so a shift in culture, or not just language. Usually, language is tied to culture, so shifting languages and then also shifting culture, leading to that further displacement, I think is something that's present as well in this poem. But again, that's just my interpretation of it. I could be totally, completely wrong, but that's the beauty of poetry, like I mentioned, is that different people interpret different things different ways. And so, the way one person interprets it, the way I interpret it, may not be necessarily the way you interpret it, which is why in the comments I encourage you guys, let me know how you interpret these poems. Did I interpret them correctly? Is there a different meaning that you picked up on that I missed? It's because I'm sure there is. Yeah, so any feedback when it comes to that, if there's an interpretation for this poem, even if it's a poem that I've written, because I start out reading my poems, even if you interpret my poem a different way, hey, that is totally fine. And maybe it's a case of, oh, I didn't think of that. But nevertheless, that's going to do it for this episode. Thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please do me a favor, like, comment, subscribe, share it with your friends, turn on post notifications so every time I upload a video, so you can see it as soon as it drops. Let me know in the comments below your thoughts on the poems, your thoughts on my reading of the poems. Did you like or dislike how I analyzed them, and your interpretation of these poems? I'm definitely welcome and open to chat with you guys about that, because that's the beauty of poetry. But nevertheless, thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you guys later. Peace.